Hello everybody, warm welcome to this S&OP Masterclass from Roima. My name is Søren Hammer and I'll be your host for this podcast here today. The purpose of these masterclasses is to dive into trending and hot topics within supply chain planning, give you our perspective on them, and hopefully also give you something that you can use in your daily planning. And today's topic is no different. Today's topic is around variability in your supply chain planning and why that can be a big problem in your planning. Some of you that are regular listeners here might say now, Mr. Hammer, is this really a trending topic within supply chain planning? Well, maybe not, but it should be because it's very, very important. And as normal, I am not alone in the studio. I'm joined by my very good colleague, Benjamin, to shed light on this exciting topic and hopefully give you some good perspective. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thank you.
As normal, Benjamin, maybe there's one or two that hadn't met you in the past. So let's start off by who is Benjamin and what's your background to dive into this topic?
Yes, my name is Benjamin Obling, working with the integrated business planning in Roima. I've been working with the Burrito IBP product for the last 16 years or so, working in various industries and always with demand planning, inventory planning, and integrated business planning.
Excellent. But let's dive into it. Benjamin, when I did my notes for the podcast today, the title of this podcast was Variability, the Silent Killer in Planning. Maybe stating a bit much, but I think maybe starting by giving us your perspective on this variability. Why is it something that people should care about really in their planning, and why is it like the hidden enemy for many people?
Yeah, I guess for most or many supply chain professionals, it almost comes without saying that uncertainty or variability is a huge problem, because that's what will keep them awake at night in the supply chain, because supply chain is basically, the reason for that is that it's about planning. So we need to plan in supply chain, and of course when we have a plan, what we don't want is uncertainty around the plan to change it, etc. You could say the example could be if you're buying ice creams and you're with a bunch of good friends going out to buy an ice cream on a nice summer holiday. You'll just go to the ice cream store, you'll get whatever you need. You don't need to plan anything there. You can just go and you'll get your favorite ice cream, and that's all perfect. The problem would then be for the supply chain of the ice cream back upstream. You could say, okay, they don't know that you're coming that day. They don't know what your preference is. They don't know the weather. They don't know the conditions when they were purchasing the vanilla 6 months ago. That maybe the geography, the political, say, environment around purchasing that vanilla and so on when it arrives is different. It should come from a different country sourcing, etc. So all of those uncertainties would then be in the supply chain, where they are actually removing all of the uncertainty when we then, on this nice summer holiday, will go out and buy this ice cream, because it will be ready and we won't notice, and it's perfect, and we get our vanilla ice cream.
Yeah.
But a lot of uncertainty has been going into that and planning that.
Yeah. So what I also hear you say is that it can have, from a planning perspective, quite big consequences also if we don't take this uncertainty or variability into enough consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. And the clear you could say consequences are, of course, economical. So that would be lost sales. So you don't have the ice cream. You won't sell that ice cream to us that day. We would also be as clients in this basic example, of course, very unsatisfied that we can't get it. So that's unsatisfied customers. It's loss of gross profit. It's building up inventories in order to buffer up for the uncertainties. It's air freight when we need to purchase the vanilla from somewhere else because of different reasons, etc., or and so on. So a lot of replanning, rescheduling, idle capacity, idle manning, a lot of costs going into the uncertainty.
Okay, so a big topic actually
Sure.
here today. So if we're established, yes, it's important. Yes, the consequences can be really big. Let's try to break it down then. Let's take a normal S&OP process, basically, and maybe that's a good way to dive into the more nerdy areas of this and take it one by one. So if we go into the demand planning side, or the whole forecasting side of things, where do you see this really coming into play?
Yeah, so the obvious is, of course, that we don't know the exact demand of our customers. So basically, the uncertainty in the forecast. That is the main topic. That will be the reason. So for example, we are selling more than what we expected. We are selling less than what we expected. The mix is different. It's suddenly jumping up, etc. That's the clear uncertainty in the demand planning.
Yeah. Okay. So it's all about getting into the details of the forecasting, basically. So it's not just the one fit all here. It's really getting into, okay, where in your demand planning or in your forecasting do you see the main uncertainty?
Yeah. So you could say if we are forecasting on very high level, for example, we might have a very high certainty, or at least have the idea that we have a very high certainty. So let's say we forecast revenue at total product group level, for example, and we'll have a 90-something% accuracy, and it's all good. But if it's all wrongly distributed down to the single SKUs and items or geographies, etc., okay, then we'll have the stock out and all of the uncertainty anyway.
Yeah, and I guess that's the normal picture, that where we really find the fluctuations or the variability is on the lower levels. So we might be able to say ice cream, check, summer, yes, probably going to sell something.
Yes, sure.
Like that, but it's like in the devil is in the details here. So how do we work with that part, do you think?
Yeah, so you could say the part about addressing this is really on the demand planning side, making as good predictions as possible. That's of course easy to say. That would be using AI models, making sure that we make the best possible predictions, so that we sort of squeeze all the information out of the data that we have available, both internally and externally, to make the best possible prediction of the future. But then there will be an element left of uncertainty that we need to accept, and that is sort of into, okay, what do we do about it? Because you can't get a 100% forecast accuracy. You can always try to improve it and so on. Sometimes we see sort of of course we have the aim of always increasing it and so on. But if you just think of it as there will be random walks. So in our example here, did we choose one ice cream store or another ice cream store? Very random reasons for doing that. And that's the same in the supply chain. It will fluctuate. We just need to get down to what is the lowest level of uncertainty that we can put into the planning as possible.
So there's a data, of course, route to working with the uncertainty, and I think we have also dived into that in other podcasts. But I also think it very interesting when we talk variability is the uncertainty introduced by the organization, your own organization, meaning we'll have promotion campaigns, things like that, where it's gut feeling based on what's going to happen. How do you work with those kind of elements if you are to minimize then the uncertainty you end up with in your planning?
Yeah, I would say first step would be to measure. So make sure, okay, where are the big uncertainties? So what are the uncertainties that we have? So basically map them out and then start to measure it. So forecast accuracy in the simple example here could also be on the supply side, lead time, MOQs, etc. A bunch of areas where we have variability. But measuring that uncertainty, because then we can start to say, okay, where do we have the uncertainty? Where is it really big? Can we do anything about it? So taking this jump in sales because of a promotion, or you could say when we just have the lack of accuracy in a certain area, okay, did we know that actually? Yes, we did, because that was actually a planned campaign. It was just not communicated between sales and operations, for example. Okay, so then we need to change that whole process. So mapping out and measuring the uncertainty, find out, okay, where is it we have the big uncertainty? Yeah. Another element is that we often see is that we'll get a certain accuracy with the AI forecast, and then we have market intelligence input on top of that, where we invite sales, marketing, the organization into adjusting in the forecast. And that actually also introduces an element of uncertainty. There might be a tendency to overestimate, so that's actually a uncertainty that we ourselves throw into the process that we want to eliminate. And then the countermeasures would then be, again, measuring it, make sure we find the right reason causes. Okay, so is it the big increases, the big decreases when we do adjustments? Is it minor increases, decreases, etc.? Where is it? Which planners is it? Which geography? So we can address it and attack it. Yeah. So we only get the inputs that we want.
Yeah.
That will never happen, but that will be a journey.
That will be a journey. Yeah. Another thing that I would like to ask you is because sometimes when I talk to company that has almost given up on some of these aspects, it's around the changes in that portfolio or that product mix. It's basically a lot of facing in new products all the time, which leave them in a situation where they feel they're just guessing, basically. Are there anything we can do to work with that uncertainty?
Yeah. It's certainly a process that needs high attention, because if you have a strong AI forecast, that will reduce a lot of the work that you put into creating the forecast on these, let's say 80% of your business that actually does continue. Maybe it's 60, maybe it's 90, depending on your industry. But let's remove all of that work so that we can redirect the work into the real changes that we actually know and that we can't predict. So new products, for example, let's spend time on that instead. And some of the concrete things we can do is, of course, to make sure that wherever new products are created, the information floats to the S&OP team. The items are actually created in the ERP system. We get a prediction based on what is does it look like something we have already? It normally does. It's very seldom actually that we have like greenfield areas in a company with completely new business areas. So it very often is, you make soft drinks and it's not a Coca-Cola, but it looks like it. It's with cherry. Okay, so it probably has some kind of the same seasonality. It has of course, it's a different level because not a lot of people like cherry and so on. But you could say you can use like modeling to be very concrete in making those predictions. You can also use previous launches. So you basically look at, okay, let's take 20 different historical launches. How is the in sale? How does it then look when we look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months down the road? And then looking at, okay, the in sale we have right now with this new cherry product, how does that follow our historical in sales? And then we can start to make adjustments to the predictions as fast as possible. It will always start with a business case and a prediction there, but it can really be data driven, at least to some extent.
Yeah. So I think my outtake from what you're saying there is it's in almost all cases it's a mixture of data and working together in the organization, information, communication. So really, maybe that's something that we miss sometimes working in our own little silos in the planning, that working on the same plan, making sure information around campaign, promotion, mix, all those kind of things flow in an easy way and is adapted into the plan. That is a big part of it also.
Yeah, and then being crisp about when is it really important to know everything and when is it not important. There is this saying, if only Siemens knew what Siemens knows. Yeah. So right, okay, so if everything was known in a huge organization like Siemens, okay, then it would all be perfect. The problem is that's way too expensive. So if we are sharing all information at all times, that's basically not an advice we can use operationally. So we also need to be crisp on, for example, saying, okay, in this product category, if the change that we are looking at is less than X%, we don't want to know about it. Don't spend time on it. We want to know the big changes, the significant changes. On a huge product, we're running a promotion. It will make a huge increase in that chain. It will make a 2% increase in total sales. Forget about it. It's random walk. We have it covered already. Yeah. So that's another part. Yeah. Prioritizing it, because it's way too expensive to know everything.
Yeah, would be nice.
Yes.
Perfect. But let's maybe park the demand planning area now. I think there's many good perspectives there. But okay, let's say we now have our, let's call it perfect demand plan. It's at least what we believe in now. This will happen. Then you're not done with this uncertainty. Then we are flipping it around and say, okay, what does that then mean for our supply side, our inventory side of things? And maybe starting with the supply side. How do we see these uncertainties, these variability issues, and what to be aware of on that side when we have to actually find out what to order, what to get into our inventories?
Yeah. You could say on overall level, then you could say now we talk about the let's say the reduction of the uncertainty, because we're making a better plan. But how do we then, with the remaining uncertainty, and we need to face that hard fact that there will be remaining uncertainty, how do we adapt to that? And you could say the one example is, of course, the inventories. So saying, okay, we don't know exactly when people will buy this ice cream as example. But if we know the uncertainty, then we can also adapt to that uncertainty. So we can say, okay, we have some fluctuations in the demand. We also have fluctuations in the supply. So we have different lead times. We have different MOQs. We have different capacity constraints that will also lead to different lead times and so on. So we actually know, or we can map out these different uncertainties, and we can also measure them. So even though we don't know the total, the right prediction, we don't know the exact sale, the exact demand, we don't know the exact lead time, but we actually know what we don't know. I mean, we know that it's going to be in this area. So the uncertainty, we know the sales will be around 100. And we know the uncertainty is plus minus 20, for example. Okay, then we know what we don't know, and that's good because then we can adapt to it, and then we can make our safety stocks to be concrete. We can make our safety stocks so that they will be the buffer. That's the classical example, of course. But that should take both the demand variability and the supply variability into account.
And also, I guess, in an optimization angle or approach to it, because it can also, what you're saying, can be extremely expensive if you take too much.
Yes, absolutely, and that's the financial balancing, making sure that we don't go completely crazy in high service levels on a low profit margin product, for example. But instead of doing that, we'll balance that with the total cost. Yeah. Because it's really sure that it's really important here that we know the variability, and we can buffer up for the variability, so we can adapt to the variability. It will just be very expensive. So the problem is, at some point it's going to be too expensive, and we need to strike that balance of how do we adapt to the things that we know we don't know, and how much do we adapt. And there it's possible to optimize that. There are algorithms to optimize and strike the right balance, at least with the uncertainty that we have and that we know. The very tricky part comes when we don't know what we don't know. That's the next level of uncertainty. And that would be things to be concrete. That would be things like the COVID, like war, like Suez Channel, etc. So things that sort of comes completely out of the blue. And of course you could say, okay, we could buffer up for that, but that's just going to be crazy expensive and not worth it, basically.
So more with the geopolitical ones, it's more about handling it. Of course, how can we find a leading indicator? Can we get information in that can help us act as quickly as possible, but not plan for the closure of the Suez Canal or something like that? That would be pretty expensive.
I would say the answers there would be to create the resilience or the robustness in the supply chain, so that when it hits you, you can adapt fast.
Yeah, but that's then of course moving maybe away from the normal S&OP process more to what kind of footprint do we need on the supply side and things like that. New topics.
Yes,
next time. But just to get a bit nerdy on it, because there's three things that we hear a lot from our customers within Pareto IBP and talk to them about. One of them is the supplier uncertainty. They feel many times they are looking into this black box, basically, of course, especially the ones that have many suppliers, and they have lead times in their ERP system, in their master data, but they don't trust it. It might be missing, and they're really struggling to work with that. How can we help them in a more data-driven way in that?
Yeah, so say mapping out the different data points that we know are super critical for the planning is one set, and then looking at how does the reality look. So when we have a standard lead time in our ERP system, which is set by the negotiation with the supplier and so on. Okay, what is the actual lead time that we see? That would be the easy to understand approach, and also let's say concrete approach. Say okay, we have a standard lead time of 20 days, for example, but we can see that they are on average delivering in 70% of the cases on the 20 days or even less, and that's actually something we also don't want, because we don't want the working capital before time. But then in 10% of the cases they are delayed with 10 days, and in 20% of the cases they are delayed with 50 days. Okay, so we can measure that. That could be, and that also goes for MOQs and other decision points in the supply chain. But if we go back to the lead time of the supplier, uncertainty, then one way of handling it could be, in this case, to prolong the standard lead time. So we basically say, okay, now it's not 20 days, dear supplier, we'll actually order it 30 or 40 days beforehand. But that reduces our reaction time because he is actually able to deliver in 70% of the cases with the short lead time. So we want to keep that short lead time and be able to keep the resilience and robustness in the supply chain, because otherwise we are taking that out and sort of surrendering to the uncertainty, so to say. So instead, let's keep the short lead time and then buffer up so that we still tell the supplier, well, it's 20 days and we'll hit you whenever and punish you, sort of in monetary terms, whenever you are delayed and so on. So we'll try to get to those 20 days. But actually, behind the scenes, we are buffering up because we know that he's going to be late in 30% of the cases, and we also know how much he's going to be late. So we know what we don't know, or what will happen, and what we don't know will happen, and we can actually buffer up for it. So we're not going to be in trouble, and we'll still, push him and still keep the resilience in the supply chain for the 70% of the cases.
I think that excellent advice, like not telling them, that might be saying a lot, but keeping the focus on the supplier, but adapting to a situation where we're probably not going to end up in the perfect state. I think that's very good. But so that's on the external side, but some companies also have internal uncertainty. Of course, if you're a manufacturing company, your own production here, there will be variability, uncertainty coming there, a lot of firefighting on daily level, in many cases changing plans, etc. If we let's stay on the tactical planning horizon still, and maybe this capacity planning here, how can we help companies maybe avoid some of the day-to-day firefighting that this uncertainty could generate?
Yeah. So if we continue from the lead time discussion, we can do the exact same thing if we have a finished good warehouse for our own manufactured products, actually. So we could say, okay, we know that the lead time is 4 weeks on average from production, but we'll actually buffer up because we know sometimes we'll have quality issues, we'll have breakdowns on the production lines, we'll have different reasons. But say there are a ton of different reasons that will be addressed in the operations on the production or manufacturing side, but it actually all ends up from a data point of view in a longer lead time. So it's actually exactly the same method we can use in order to use the inventory to buffer up for it. If we don't have the inventory and we need to build it whenever we have the order, for example, another element of that can be that we are working with postponement. So that means that we will make sure that we produce the products as specific as as generic as we can. And then when we get the orders and know more, so we are closer, then we start to make the last variant configuration. So that could be like you don't put on the label with the country-specific label before the very end. That's the classic and normal example of doing the postponement.
Yeah.
Another element could be that you leave out some capacity in production for the unforeseen. So you plan with what we don't know. So we know what we don't know in that case, so we can plan for it. So say, okay, that's roughly 10%. So we know there will be 10% disturbance. Okay, then we need to plan with 10% extra. And then follow those 10% and follow up and all of that, but it will always be there.
Yeah. Okay. Last area I just want to ask you within this section is more of on the system side. Is there something we should be aware of? I'm thinking about the MRP that in many companies run either in the ERP or on a simulation system. Is there? My experience is that these runs can be very, very, like you can say, sensitive to the input, of course. So you get in and things can fluctuate quite a lot in similar pictures, basically. Are there anything there we can do to maybe reduce some of that MRP uncertainty and what happens afterwards in the ERP systems? We should have a look at.
Yeah, Yeah, it is, as you say, very nerdy and deep, but actually it's super important and something that we also paying more and more attention to, because you could say we can improve the forecast as much as possible and so on, and then we put it into the ERP system. There are a lot of logics, or might be a lot of logics on different lead times, on MOQs, on production calendars, on supplier calendars, for example, bundling, rounding, etc., making sure it fits a pallet and so on. So a lot of different logics, which are all made for, with good reasoning behind it. Okay, we want to make it as good and quality, high quality in the planning as possible. And then we're just building a ton of complexity into that MRP. And that means that the MRP will do all of this logic. It will move back and forward the different productions. It will have huge lot sizes. Those lot sizes will go on to the next level. There we also have all of these logics going. And if you then have, let's say, 7 different levels, even across factories, for example, then this plan will then be super detailed. It will say, okay, on Tuesday you need to start, and so on, based on all of this. Then you'll have go maybe 3 days, 1 week into the future, and this will be completely different. And because of all of those logics, all of the different production and purchase orders and so on might actually be moved quite a lot in time back and forth. And that means now it's a completely different picture you're looking at. And if you then share that with your suppliers, and now you're sending something which is completely different, and then the next week you're sending something again completely different, and they'll think, okay, what is going on? You don't have anything under control, and you've sort of spent a ton of time making sure that you're really nitty-gritty in control, and you're actually not, because it's all changing and fluctuating at the same time. So one element. So what do we do? So one element in this can be to share with the suppliers. If we take that as a concrete example, to both show them what is the average usage we are expecting of this component, for example, sort of flattened out. So based on the sales we have all the way at the end of our supply chain, whatever component is going into that finished good, or all of those finished goods, what is then our expectation of the level that we are seeing? So let's say we are believing we'll have 10,000 units per week, for example. That's our consumption. It has some seasonality and so on. When we take it into the MRP, that will be converted into 100,000, 000, 50,000, 000, and so on. And maybe it's 000 for a very long time, because we have excess stock somewhere in the chain, not at the component level maybe, but at semi-finished or a different warehouse and so on. And then we'll be sending a signal to the supplier saying, we don't need this component anymore. Okay, then they'll make full stop, handbrake on the production with their suppliers upstream, etc. And then suddenly we'll have this 1,000 coming into the picture, because now the plan has changed, our schedule, blah blah, across these 7 levels. And then they're saying, okay, we thought this was almost dead, because you just sent us a month ago, a supplier forecast which told us that it's going to be in ages from now. Yeah. And then it hits like this, and then you can say this, looking at also what is the level. Remove all of this nitty-gritty planning and so on, saying, but we're going to use approximately 10,000 a week, for example. And right now, our best guess is the inbound will be in September. That's when we need it. Yep. But it could be October, it could be November, it could be August. We don't know, but it's still alive.
Yeah. Oh. Perfect. And there's so many areas within this that we could dive, but one maybe last before we talk a bit about how we find these problem in our supply is also talk a bit about the human element, because you can have your excellent planning you have taken into every account, and you still have this problem in your supply chain. And in some cases, I guess it's also because of us. We are sitting there as planners, maybe as sales, coming in with input, things like that. How do you see that in a S&OP process affecting this?
Yeah, so the inputs into the planning, the forecast, the safety stocks. Let's say that now we have all of that under control. We have the best possible AI forecast. We have our phase-in process is going. We know what we don't know. We have buffered up for that. We keeping the production agile and so on. And then we have all the production proposals and specific purchase proposals that our planners will then start to do. They don't have the full picture. They have a very detailed picture of what they are looking at, and they are then making adjustments. So they're doing something else than what the MRP is doing.
Yeah.
And in many cases, that's a very good thing because they are saving us from all the errors we make in the, let's say, the automated planning, if we do have errors, and there's something they know, okay, this supplier is suddenly unable to deliver because of some reasoning. If we don't have that into the model, and we might not have that because that was an email, etc., okay, then the planner needs to adjust and do something. So those are all the good adjustments that the detailed has done in the detailed planning or the execution part. And then we have the others where it's more about, let's say, could be fear of stocking out, where we actually do something because we want to avoid, let's say we have one key account manager, he has had a stock out situation with one client, he's shouting more or less actively at us. We don't want to experience that again, so we buffer up, we purchase a bit earlier.
Yeah.
Maybe we have, and that's okay, so then he won't shout up as much. Maybe that was a low gross profit product. Actually, but he was the one making all the loud noise. Yeah. And then we have another one with a high margin product. That is a customer that could go elsewhere. So we won't really hear any screaming in the organization. He will just go somewhere else. Okay, then we have actually lost a lot of gross profit in that very detailed decision.
Yeah.
But what we can do there is to measure this non-compliance, you could say, or adjustment factor. Because when we say non-compliance, we also say it's always bad adjustments, and it surely isn't.
No.
And we need to have the people who actually knows and are very close to the suppliers or to the production floor, etc., to adjust the plan.
Yeah.
We just need to make sure that gap between the actual plan and what actually happens, or the plan and what actually happens, that is as close as possible.
Yeah.
Because if they know a lot of things, we need to put it into the model so that we can plan with it correctly.
Yeah. I think it's quite clear, Benjamin, that this is a complicated area, and also why many companies, of course, have these difficulties in their planning. There's so many moving parts in this. So a question for you could be, okay, how do we spot this in our supply chain, in our planning? How do we measure this? Because that needs to be, I guess, a factor in this to spot where do we have our specific areas of interest within variability and uncertainty. So what do your recommendation there in terms of measurements and how to spot this?
Yeah, so you can say one element on the behavior in the planning. So how do we actually execute the plan as compared to what the plan was? One way of addressing that is to look at how does the MRP plan and what is then the actual plan? What is the big gap between those two, and then make sure to order it by the working capital impact. So basically inventory controlling, making sure that the controlling of the inventories is looking at that and making sure that is prioritized based on financial impact, because otherwise there will be a ton of changes that we don't want to look at. How many screws you buy and so on. Never mind. It's the big parts we want.
Yeah.
And then also again, first map out all the areas where we have these uncertainties. So say, okay, it's in the plan. So when we have the proposals, how do we then convert the proposals? That is one element. Yeah. The MOQ, the master data. Okay, how are we then? What is the master data? What is the actual MOQs we're seeing? The lead time. What is the standard? What are the actuals? The forecast. What is the automated AI forecast? What is the actual overridden forecast? Where do we have the biases? So map out the different elements in the supply chain where we have variability, measure it, and then do the analysis looking into, okay, where is it that we see it? Is it something we can do something about? Let's do that, change the process. Is it something we just need to adapt to because that is random walk? Yeah. It's going to be too expensive to know everything. So we'll accept the unknown.
Yeah. How would you make that prioritization? Would you make it about financials or resource? How would you, in practice, find out which of those areas to tackle?
Yeah, coming from a financial education and being
leading question.
Old business controller, it will always be the financial side. You can say we all go to work to maximize the shareholder value, right? We sometimes forget that, but that's it. That's the important part. Yeah. And you could say, how would we otherwise prioritize? Of course, then you can have strategic considerations on saying, for example, new customers that we are taking in as a company. Okay, we want to give them a good starting experience. For example, okay, so then we'll do something that might not be completely financially optimal, or making a new product launch, etc. We need to believe in it, and we know that let's say 4 out of 5 product launches are going to fail a bit, but we don't get that fourth or fifth success if we don't plan for success every time, for example. But otherwise, on all the things we've discussed, I think today here, we're actually able to quantify most of that and quantify the financial impact, and then prioritize it based on financial impact.
Yeah. Excellent. So maybe in conclusion, I think, as I started by saying, I think it's a hugely important area that should be prioritized, and I think we still highlight on that. But I think most important takeaway from me anyway is that about get into the details of it. I think our discussion showed that there's a lot of details there, but know your business on this. Find out where do you have your uncertainty, measure it, prioritize, and then work it. Last question, and then we have to wrap up due to the time, but would you, once you have done all these steps, would you take it as a step by step in the S&OP process? So, okay, let's now use 3 months working on demand planning, or would you actually make it more of a holistic approach and work with the whole of the supply chain planning at once on the most important areas, of course? How would you, in your experience, what would work best there?
I think that would depend completely on the organization, actually, because what is the resources available at the organization, because clearly there are so many good things you can do to first of all reduce the uncertainty, then afterwards adapt to the uncertainty, create the resilience to handle that last part of the uncertainty that we can't buffer up for, etc. That calls for doing everything as soon as possible. Yeah. Is that possible in all organizations? No, it's not. And then you should start and then again make an assessment. Say, okay, where do we get the biggest impact financially? Yes. Okay, if we have a forecast that is really lousy, we're spending a ton of time making a poor forecast. Okay, let's fix that. It's fairly easy. Then let's move on to the uncertainty and the inventories. Let's move on to and so on. And then at the end, look at the transparency across the full supply chain. Say, okay, now we just mapped out what we talked about, what is in the organization. We also have the customers. There is a lot of uncertainty, not of knowledge at the customer side. There is a lot of knowledge at the supplier side. So getting that full end-to-end visibility would then be
perfect. I think that was an excellent wrapping up comment on how to get started. Benjamin, thank you so much for your time to give your perspective today. I think there's a couple of more masterclasses in this topic, at least in my head at the moment. So excellent to have you in the studio once again. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And also thank you to all of you out there listening in here today. I hope you got something out of this bit nerdy topic we have here today, but we are supply chain nerds, so that is what you're gonna get. If you want to discuss this or any other topic further with either Benjamin or I in the future, feel free to reach out. We love to hear you. Also, if you have ideas for masterclasses that you want to have us dive into, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to hear you. So thank you for your time and have a good day out there.